Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something we honestly rarely stop to think about. What does true leadership actually mean in a democracy? I mean, we hear the word leader thrown around literally every single day, right? But today, we're putting it under a microscope. We're going to strip away the party colors, cut through all the daily noise, and just look at the mechanics of it all.
Picture this. You've got two public figures standing in front of you. One of them carefully calculates the PR value of every single word, and they only speak up when it actively boosts their own political image. The other steps in whenever people are hurting, even if it totally tanks their popularity. Ask yourself, who actually earns your support there? Now, just to be clear, we aren't here to endorse any specific party today. We're just objectively looking at the core machinery of how we choose who builds our future.
To really unpack that machinery, we kind of need to draw a line in the sand right off the bat. Not every politician is a leader. Those are two very different jobs. A political representative is fundamentally tied to an organization's survival. They represent the party. A true leader, though, transcends the organization. They tie themselves directly to the welfare of the citizens.
It all boils down to the internal monologue driving these people. Listen to the difference here. The representative is constantly calculating, okay, what helps my political position? It's all about optics. It's all about holding on to power. But the leader? They ask a much heavier, outward-facing question. What helps the nation? One mindset is completely anchored in political survival, and the other is anchored in genuine, actual service.
And honestly, this completely shifts their timeline. A political representative is pretty much locked in this frantic, endless panic for the next election. Their horizon is maybe 2 to 5 years at the absolute maximum. A leader, on the other hand, is thinking about the next generation. It's exactly like the difference between planting a fast-growing weed just for some instant ground cover versus planting a slow-growing oak tree that you know you might never even get to sit under.
Let's bring this down to earth for a second. Think about your own job. Imagine you have a manager at your workplace who only ever solves problems for the employees who constantly flatter him. You wouldn't call that guy a visionary leader, right? No way. You'd call him biased, entirely ineffective, and honestly, a total nightmare for the company's goals.
Now flip the script. Contrast that with a manager who actually listens to criticism, owns up to their mistakes, and treats everyone equally, completely regardless of who strokes their ego. You instantly respect them. We demand this very basic level of fairness and maturity at our 9-to-5 jobs, so why on earth should we give our government a free pass and demand anything less?
Because when that basic standard of fairness drops in government, well, that's where things get genuinely sketchy. A massive blind spot develops, which we can call selective attention. It's not just about prioritizing one crisis over another, it's about noticing the pattern of what gets deliberately ignored. When public figures only pay attention to the tragedies that conveniently fit into their political narrative, a very real rot starts to set into the system.
Think about it like this. If your doctor only treated the patients he personally liked, would you trust that doctor with your life? Absolutely not. Democracy is basically our societal healthcare, and it requires that same level of equal concern. We would never trust a biased doctor with our physical health, so it goes without saying we shouldn't accept biased leadership when it comes to our nation's health.
Because suffering doesn't belong to just one political party. The harsh reality is a pothole doesn't check your voter registration before blowing out your tire. Inflation and public health crises, they literally do not care about your ideology. So a true leader shouldn't run a background check on your personal beliefs before deciding to actually do their job.
When that baseline of equal concern vanishes, you trigger this terrifying domino effect. First, decisions start being made purely to buy votes. And because of that, public trust just begins to evaporate. Without trust, people completely stop believing in their institutions. And then comes the final, absolutely most dangerous collapse. We stop believing in each other. And you know, a democracy without trust is just a building with no foundation. It's going to crumble.
So we're really looking at a massive crossroads of mindsets here. On one side, you have a mindset focused entirely on solutions. How do we improve education? How do we create jobs, reduce poverty? On the other side, you have a mindset that is basically addicted to permanent conflict. How do we create outrage, divide people, turn every single minor disagreement into a literal battle? One of these builds a nation up, and the other just mines it for cheap attention.
And that brings us to what is basically an unavoidable law of physics in a society. Development requires cooperation. A nation just cannot move forward if its people are constantly being provoked into fighting one another. If all our collective societal energy is drained by manufacturing these endless battles, we have literally zero energy left for actual problem solving. Now,
I know it's incredibly easy to just sit back and point the finger at politicians for this continuous chaos. But we have to look in the mirror for a second and ask a really uncomfortable question. Who puts them there? They don't just magically appear out of thin air. They are placed on those pedestals by us.
Because at the end of the day, politicians, like anyone in a highly competitive market, just follow incentives. It's basically supply and demand. The quality of our leadership is a direct mirror of what we choose to reward. If we give our votes and our clicks to blind anger and theatrical outrage, well, the system is going to optimize to give us more of it. But if we start demanding honesty and consistency, the system has absolutely no choice but to adapt.
Which brings us to the ultimate realization here. The absolute biggest responsibility in a democracy isn't sitting inside Parliament. It's inside every single voting booth. If we actually want solution-oriented long-term leadership, we can't just cross our fingers and hope for the best. We have to actively demand it, and that starts by changing how we consume information and how we cast our ballots.
Just take a second and visualize the future. The source material we're looking at challenges us to imagine the trajectory of India 20 years from now. But honestly, even if you are just looking at the future of your own hometown, the choice is exactly identical. Do we want our kids inheriting an exhausted political battlefield or a nation where leaders actually compete to solve our biggest challenges?
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. Try to completely drop the question of which party you instinctively want to defend. Before your next vote, ask yourself something a lot more demanding. Who consistently serves the people, regardless of the politics? Governments change, parties shift, but accountability has to remain constant. The next time you step into the voting booth, remember, you aren't just picking a politician for today. You are choosing the standard for the entire next generation. Thanks so much for joining me.